Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kelly Palma with Swiftland's Continuing Education, and I would like to welcome you to today's webinar, Empower Yourself, and today's presenter, Linda Bruno. Linda has been developing and conducting training workshops for libraries and other organizations for more than 15 years. She offers workshops on topics ranging from leadership skills to returning balance and lots of areas in between. Linda received her MBA from the University of Florida and has years of experience in hands-on management positions. She develops her workshops based on solid research and, more importantly, real-life application. Please welcome Linda Bruno and enjoy her webinar. Linda?
Thanks so much, Kelly. I appreciate that. And welcome everybody to today's session, Empower Yourself. I love that we're wrapping up our Sparkle series, if you've been to several of those, with the idea of empowering ourselves, because truly we are the only ones that can do that. And I think we've kind of gotten away from the idea that we have that within us to do that. So the first thing I want to address is the little baby elephant in the room, which is that the word empower has become a bit cliche. And when you look up the word cliche in the dictionary, it says a phrase or opinion that is overused and betrays a lack of original thought. So I wanted to just address that because indeed we have heard for several years, empower your staff, empower your staff, empower your staff. But I will say that as far as original thought, we don't hear a lot about empowering ourselves. And that's so very important. So that's what we're going to talk about today. With the email that you got for the link to get into this room, there was a handout, as there always is. I would highly encourage you to print that handout because the idea of empowering yourself is certainly applicable to today, but it's going to be applicable to 3 months from now and a year from now and 5 years from now. So if you have this handout printed, you'll have some things to ponder and reflect on when maybe you don't feel quite so empowered by yourself. So I do encourage you to print that handout. So I want you to think about this, and I'd like for you to respond in the chat box. When you saw the title to this, Empower Yourself, what did you think of in your own mind? How do you define empowering yourself? Would you type that into the chat box, please? Take control. I like that, Susan. Confidence. Yes, Stephanie. Being strong, Lorelai. Yes. Positive, Natalia said. I think that's what that meant. I'm not sure. I'm going to give this another second to pop up into the chat box. I see some people typing, so I want to make sure I give that a second. Trusting. Oh, wow. Trusting yourself, right, Susan C? That's the way I look at it. I mean, it's great to trust other people, but if we don't trust ourselves, we're not going to empower ourselves in a lot of different areas. Ernestine said, take action. Just do it, right, Ernestine? Motivating yourself. Yes, Vanessa. Another word that the word yourself needs to be attached to because people can't really motivate other people. We can create motivating environments, but really sustainable motivation comes from within, and so does empowerment of yourself. Believing in ourselves, lacking fear, self-determination, faith in yourself, doing it despite fearing failure, all of the above. And yet I suspect a lot of people in the room, me included, struggle with this from time to time. And we give in to what society seems to be telling us and the media seems to be telling us is a bit of a victim mentality. And I've told many of you that have been in my webinars before, I tend to step on toes when it comes up to the self-reflective kinds of topics. I'll try not to make them bleed, but I will nudge you. I will push you because, as I said, it seems like our media and our society is telling us that everything within our lives is out of our control. And certainly there are many things. We all know COVID's out of our control. We can control what we do for ourselves, but we can't control what other people do. We all know that the weather is out of our control. There are a lot of things that are out of our control, but we sometimes give over that power. You hear that word power? Empowering yourself, we give that power to somebody or something else when we really don't have to. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I wrote down in my own notes, taking control, which several of you mentioned, of your life. Taking control of your life, identifying what you want and taking action to get there in thought, word, and deed. And that's what I want you to think about as we're working through today's process. Because if we're not taking control and if we haven't identified what's important to us, then every day is going to go by and just another day goes by. Letting yourself do. Exactly, Lorelei. I like that. Taking a chance toward achievement of a new dream. Yep. Because what's the worst that can happen, Natalia? It didn't work out the way you would have hoped. That's the basically the worst that can happen. And maybe the consequences are a little harsher than you had hoped for, but you pick yourself up and you empower yourself to move forward. Yes, Susie, don't take life for granted. It may not be here tomorrow. So let's empower ourselves today. So what I want you to think about, and you're welcome to type into the chat box, but I know this is kind of a deeper, digging, personal reflection. What do you hope to achieve by empowering yourself? And I want you to be specific. All the things you mentioned are great, but they're pretty general, aren't they? And they're great overarching themes for empowering ourselves. But you need to be specific so that you're motivated internally, like I talked about. That's called intrinsic motivation, meaning it's not coming from outside, it's coming from within you. But you need that intrinsic motivation to commit to change. In other words, you need a compelling reason to leave a 60-minute webinar. I would love to say this is life-changing, and for some people it very well may be. But I can't do that on my own, can I? I can't make you change. You've got to have that compelling reason. So take a moment, if you've got your handouts there, to jot yourself a note, specifically what you hope to achieve by empowering yourself. Maybe it's something along the lines of, I'm going to speak up more at meetings so that my value is recognized at work. Or it might be in a personal relationship, because as I've told you many times, if you've been on other webinars, I believe there are lots of things in our work webinars that can also be pulled out and used in our personal lives. So if you've got something in mind that you'd like to share, I would love to hear that, because when you put things in writing or in chat boxes, you're a little more committed to them. So be specific about what you're motivated to commit to change, so that you're motivated to commit to change. Self-worth, that's a big one, isn't it, Cindy? And when I mentioned early, 5 minutes ago, that you may need this again in 3 months or 6 months or a year or 5 years, this is an area, Cindy, where I need a reminder of this periodically, my self-worth. Because there are things in life that knock us down occasionally. Maybe I get a bad evaluation. Maybe I get a job canceled because we didn't have enough attendees, and I think it's something that I said or did or whatever. And my self-worth takes a bit of a hit. So I need to empower myself, take control, be strong, be confident, all the things y'all mentioned, so that I keep moving forward. Because it would be very easy, wouldn't it? When our self-worth takes a hit, it would be easy to sit in a little heap and bemoan the status of our life. But we can empower ourselves to stand up and say, this is not serving me well, and move forward. Susan said, holding myself back by not doing actions to achieve goals. Yeah, exactly. I love the way you worded that, Susan. Holding myself back. Thank you for not blaming somebody else. Not that other people can't contribute to what's holding us back. They certainly can, and we know that. But a lot of times it's us. And Joan is going to be a better manager. That's wonderful. We need more of those, Joan. Let's clone you. Stephanie says, my husband speaks over me sometimes, focusing on speaking up and being heard. Yes. And that's empowerment, isn't it? Because Stephanie, you can sense when people aren't hearing you. And the empowerment piece of you says, you know what? This is not acceptable to me. I remember somebody long time ago in my work life, when there was I'm going to call it a conflict, there was debate, there was tension, there was friction, and somebody said something that was very snarky. And this fellow looked at them and said, that's not acceptable. And it was like something exploded in the room. And I thought that was a very good phrase. And I'm going to challenge you with that, Stephanie. I don't think it's anywhere in the handouts, although a piece of it is, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But you can just think it to yourself. You don't even have to say it out loud. Sometimes it may be necessary to empower yourself to say it out loud, right? It just might be necessary to say it out loud to somebody that's not hearing you. Yasmin says, to land on my feet. Susan says, self-advocacy. Yeah, because there's nobody else out there going to do it for us. Ernestine says, listen more. That's empowering yourself, isn't it, Ernestine? And it's, many of the things that you're already talking about are things that you are going to need to pull up from time to time and refresh yourself on, because there's no switch. There's no one and done. Vanessa said, putting a value on my time. I like those capital letters, Vanessa. You know what? People will steal your time as much as you will allow them to. And it's okay to share your time, isn't it, Vanessa? But you need to know where those boundaries are. And sometimes empowering yourself has to do with setting boundaries. And Cynthia said, shutting down, not able to say what's on my mind. Yeah, exactly. Yes, Stephanie, I hear you. I do hear you. And Ernestine said, be a better manager by listening more. Yes. And Natalia said, usually it becomes spontaneous to our life. And the only difference we might make is to choose having the chance in front of us when it feels like we would love it. You used the word choose, didn't you? It's a choice. Empowering yourself is a choice. Thank you all for being transparent about that and for sharing that, because what that also does is it helps other people in our room today understand they're not the only ones that struggle in this area. I've already shared with you that I struggle in this area. So with this idea of empowerment, and I've worked on it for a couple decades, to be honest. And I'm much better than I was. And I often tell people, think of yourself on a continuum of A to Z. Just picture a horizontal yardstick in front of you, and on the left side of the yardstick there's an A, and on the right side there's a Z. If you came in today and you feel like you're at a G in the area of empowering yourself, what if you can move to an L? That's going to make a significant difference in your life. I don't ever suggest that people get to Z, because none of the topics I teach on can you get to a Z. Nobody's perfect. But if we can move you to an L, and then you slip back to a K, but then you work on it some more and you go up to N. Do you see what I'm saying here? Baby steps, right? Because you have that choice. So the thing is, we're going to talk about a lot of different things that you could use to empower yourself, and not all of them will be applicable to everybody in the room today. But I will say that everybody in the room today should be able to use some of them to move them forward on the yardstick. Even write that down right on your handouts, the yardstick. Put a little line and an A and a Z and mark where you think you are right now. It could be A. I had somebody say to me, if you could just move me from D to E, and it wasn't even on this topic. But I use that analogy a lot because I'm visual. And it helps me see when I'm making progress. But here's a secret. It also helps me see when I'm sliding backwards and I need to get my focus stronger again. So what I want you to do is, we're working through the tips on the next couple of pages, is to put a check mark next to the ones that you can use and hopefully will use and are willing to use to empower yourself. Because you see right there, whoever said choose, I think it was Natalia, the word choice is in front of you. And that's what we're talking about here. So the first one is, for me, one of the key points, and I think probably most everybody in the room can use this one, and that is to watch my self-talk. Now, this doesn't have to do with empowerment, but it does have to do with self-talk. The other day, over the weekend, I was moving some things around. I'm starting to pack and getting ready for a move toward the end of the year. And I had stacked some vases on top of my refrigerator, and I had pushed them back because, that's a dangerous place for them to be. But I also have cats, and I wanted to corral all the vases in one area so I could pack them together. Well, somewhere over the last few weeks, the refrigerator starting and stopping and so forth moved one of the vases toward the edge, and I didn't notice it. And I opened the refrigerator door, and of course it was one of the heaviest vases, and bam, it went down on the floor, and it scattered everywhere across that floor. places that I couldn't even imagine it would go. Now, my self-talk wanted to say, that figures. I can't believe that happened. Now I've got to mess with this. And it's, that's what happens, isn't it? Our negative self-talk, which is the way our brain is instinctively wired, starts to say all those things. And then it ruins the whole day, right? Yeah, I can't have nice things. I understand, Stephanie. My husband and I used to joke about that when he would bang a guitar into the wall and take a dent out of the wall. He'd say, "This is why we don't have nice things, because I'm a klutz." But I have to watch that. Even saying I'm a klutz, I joke about that, but I am. This morning I was moving, what are they called? Pavers that were in my garage because I'm giving those to my niece this weekend. And I put them in the back of my car, and I had carried 2 of them to the back of my car, but I was trying to finagle one into a box so that they wouldn't be sliding around. So I set the other one not on the edge of the car, the trunk, but toward the edge. I have a hatchback kind of thing. And as I was moving the first one into the box, my hip caught that second one and it fell, and it went right down the side of my leg. And again, that could have ruined my day, but you know what I said? This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about self-talk. What I said was, "Oh, I'm so thankful that did not fall on my foot, because it would have certainly broken a bone." Now, I will tell you, I've got a 4 or 5 inch gash in my leg that's going to look pretty ugly here in a few days. That's okay. Watch your self-talk. When somebody does something to you at work that's hurtful, whether they mean it or not is not on you. But your self-talk is on you. And that's where you empower yourself. Because you can say, "I am not going to accept what they just said. I am not going to absorb it. I am not going to let it affect my self-worth," right? Because it's their opinion. It's their comment. So watch your self-talk. Susie said it's normal. We said something to ourselves when things went wrong. Exactly, Susie. It's very common. It's very normal. It's just the way we react. When human beings started on the earth, their instinct was to be negative so that they protected themselves. And it served us for many, many thousands of years. But now we have to kind of wrestle that to empower ourselves. Because again, if we're negative all the time, then we aren't going to feel empowered. We can't. How could you feel empowered if you're negative all the time? I even saw something this morning, and it said, if there are toxic people in your life and you can leave them, that may be your best choice. But sometimes we can't. Maybe we live with them, we work with them, they're family members, whatever. And I thought about the fact that I empowered myself to step away from a 40-year friendship last December. Some of you have heard a bit of this story, because it had gotten so negative and so toxic, and this person was just so hateful every time I talked to him, not toward me, but just in general, that I had to empower myself to step away, because I told him, I said, "I don't have the emotional energy for this." And he sent me a birthday card, and I thanked him on an email and asked about his dogs, and everything, surface now. It's very shallow, and that's okay, because he was affecting my self-talk. And I was, I hate to admit this, blaming him for that. So after we kind of broke it off over the phone, and it's never been romantic. He knew my husband, and I know his girlfriend and all that. But after we broke it up over the phone, I thought maybe I should call back. And my first thought was, that makes me feel negative. So I empowered myself to step away from that, and it's hard. But it was good because my self-talk was affected. So I think everybody in the room should check this one, and just do it because I asked you to. And if you never use this one, that's fine. But I think most of us actually could use some help watching our self-talk. One way to empower ourselves, this is going to sound weird, especially after what I just talked about, make and use a to-do list. Now, why do you think I'm suggesting that? For you to feel empowered. What would a to-do list, making and using it, there's a key word there, you have to use it. How would that help you feel empowered? To remind ourselves, absolutely. And then you're not beating yourself up over forgetting, right, Susie? And then Lorelei said that's the follow-up. Feel like you accomplished something. Marking stuff off, Stephanie said, it makes you feel accomplished. Camera said. Susan said, more solid. Writing things down absolutely shows our achievement. You'd see your accomplishment, something to look forward to, the goals you want to accomplish. Doesn't that sound silly? But a small goal, absolutely, Vanessa, got accomplished. And that empowers you to keep moving forward. Because on those days when you feel like, I didn't get anything done today, or I did 17 things that had nothing to do with what I thought I was supposed to get done today. But if you've got your to-do list there and you're checking things off, yes, in writing it brings it to reality. And you're using it and you're checking things off and you feel like you've accomplished things. And when you accomplish things, small, medium, large, it gives you a sense that you've empowered yourself to be your best self. And isn't that what empowering yourself is all about? It's about being your best self. It's not about being perfect. Please don't strive toward perfection in anything I ever talk to you about, because that is the enemy of excellence, because you're always picking something apart, being very critical against yourself and all of that, and you never really get to excellence because you're too focused on the perfection. So that's not what this is about. It's about helping you feel like you're accomplishing things. So you said, even when we go to the grocery, we need a grocery checklist or else we'll forget what to buy. Absolutely. And think about your life. You need a list, don't you? So that kind of ties in with the next one, which of course is set achievable but challenging goals. They're called stretch goals. When you set goals that you're pretty sure you'll never reach, how can you feel empowered by that? I actually looked up doing a PhD the other day. Somebody mentioned it to me and I thought, maybe I should take a look at that. And it would just be for self gratification, if you will, just a sense of self-fulfillment and accomplishment and all of that. But I'm at an age, and I'm just going to say that I'm at an age where I would rather focus my attention on what I do because I love what I do. And I know that if I went for a PhD at this stage of life, because I didn't get my MBA until I was in my mid-50s, just going to blurt it out there. And going for a PhD now, while I'm still doing what I love to do, would take away from what I love to do, and then I wouldn't feel empowered anymore. It would be nice to have it. Please don't get me wrong. But I'd also have to take money out of my retirement. And so that, for me, is not an achievable goal. Yes, I could do it. I totally believe I could. But it's not achievable in the way I want to achieve it. Does that make sense to everybody? So when you set those goals, make sure that you're able to achieve them in the way you want to achieve them. You're still able to have a rich life. You're still able to spend time with family or friends or doing your work or whatever you love. So set achievable but challenging goals. So what I do is most of my challenging goals have to do with my work. And that's not to say yours should, because there are a lot of other goals you could be setting. But just think through for yourself, because again, and when you achieve them, guess what? You have that sense of accomplishment, don't you? And that makes you feel empowered. Allow myself a timeout. I have been talking to so many people. I talked to somebody the other day and she said, my boss is taking a vacation and I made her promise that she would unplug, that she would disconnect, because especially in today's world, we're not doing enough of that. And it's hard to feel empowered about how you're living your life when somebody else is intruding on it 24/7. So I'm just going to throw this question out to you. Are you taking a time out occasionally? And is it a true time out? Just asking. You don't have to answer. You don't have to tell me. But sometimes it's important, because when you take the time out to reflect and ponder, not to spiral down, not to think about everything that's gone wrong and everything that's bad in the world, but to reflect and ponder on, where do I want to go from here? Isn't that question in itself empowering? Yes, exactly, Joan. What am I doing here? Because guess what? This hour is gone. We don't get it back. Today is gone. We don't get it back. But if we can look back at it and say, you know what? I lived it the way I wanted to. And that's a pretty good feeling. So I want you to reflect and ponder on, are you being your best self? Are you living your best life? Doesn't that sound very philosophical? But anybody that's ever attended any of my webinars knows that some of the weirdest topics I present, I still end up talking about living our best lives. It is the best medicine, Susie. I want to read something to you that I keep in my desk drawer that I just found a few months ago. It was in one of my husband's school folders. He taught college online, and I was cleaning out some paperwork that I'd kept for a while and just knew I was going to be moving, needed to clean it out. And I found one of his folders, and I actually just tore it off the edge of the folder because he had taped this, I think fortune cookie is what it is. It's on one of those little pieces of paper, and it's pre-printed, and it says there's only one success: to be able to live your life in your own way. How empowering is that? Yes, Joan, life's uncertain. Eat dessert first, or eat what you like to eat within bounds. You're not empowering yourself if you're creating ill health, right? So I had to back off of sugar the last few days because sugar seems to aggravate my arthritis, and I knew that, but somebody had given me cookies, and then somebody else gave me brownies, and then somebody else gave me Buckeyes, and somebody else gave me carrot cake. You don't want to throw those things away, right? So yes, I sure will, Yasmin. There's only one success. And I'm sorry I didn't put it on the handout because it just occurred to me as we're talking, to be able to live your life in your own way. And I'm very fortunate. He was my role model. So there's only one success in life: to be able to live your life in your own way. And that statement, I could have just, started the webinar with that statement, and we would have been talking about empowerment, right? It is beautiful. I love that saying. So be aware of that. Live it your own way. And I have to say, I'm going to put a bit of a disclaimer on there: not to be selfish, not to be manipulative, not to make the whole world about you. That's not what we're talking about here. But to know that as you're moving through life, if somebody doesn't approve of how you're living your life and it's not immoral or unethical or illegal, then that's their issue, isn't it? Unless it's harming them in some way. So just live your best life. That's very empowering. I didn't even realize this was coming up next. Determine that I will do it my way. That's funny. Good, Stephanie. I'm glad to hear that. Live your best life. Do it your way. And as I said, as long as you're not harming anybody, it's not illegal, immoral, unethical, or any of those things. Why not? Why not do it your way? I had somebody ask me the other day if I would do a particular program. And the program is going to be very dynamic. I have no doubt about that. But I have no interest in it. And it's not my wheelhouse, so to speak. And I said, I'm sorry, it's just, she said, I know it's not your wheelhouse. And I said, well, here's the thing. I would rather turn you down than let you down. Because I've worked for a lot of years trying to help people, especially in Florida. I've been here for 16 years now, and I started working with libraries immediately when I came to Florida. And that's my goal. And rather than do a program that I'm not totally invested in, and I don't have the energy invested in it, then I would rather turn that down, even though it's my income. Yes, exactly. It's their problem, not yours. Susan said, here, a good definition of being selfish is when it affects other people. So doing what is best for you isn't. There you go, Susan. Exactly. Trust myself. You aren't going to get it right every time. Let me just be perfectly honest about that. Most of us don't anyway. But if you don't trust yourself and you listen to other voices, are you going to live your best self? Are you going to have that success that is living life your own way? Now, of course, when we're at work, we have to listen to other people. It's what they've asked us to do. If it's what our job description is or whatever. But you know what I'm talking about here. How am I living my life? Trust yourself. And you will make mistakes, but trust yourself to recover from them. Empower yourself to see, to be honest with yourself, and look at where you got off track with whatever it was you were doing. Because that's part of trusting yourself, isn't it? Being honest. You don't trust other people that aren't honest with you. So you have to be honest with yourself. And you have to be willing to do that pondering and reflecting. in order to empower yourself. Natalia said, having role models is a wonderful privilege. I like that word, privilege. So much of what we do in our lives is a privilege, isn't it? Sometimes the situation could turn so unique and you feel just alone and need to go ahead. Yep, absolutely. I was talking to a friend of mine that I actually graduated from high school with, and he is moving to Colombia, the country. And his wife is from there, but they've lived in the United States for over 20 years. And we were talking back and forth by email. And I said, he is in a similar situation to me. We don't have close family. And so they're moving to be closer to her family. And they just need to go ahead with that, even though I'm sure people will tell him at his job and so forth that he's crazy and weird and why would you do that? I think it's wonderful. He's empowering himself to do that. Or like I said, I think also with trusting yourself, you also have to give yourself grace. Exactly. You're not going to get it right. Yep. Don't beat yourself up. Exactly, Lorelai. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Trust yourself. Respect yourself. Isn't that what empowerment is? It's respecting yourself, and as so many of you have alluded to, trusting your own judgment, listening to yourself, having grace for yourself, all of that. You will mess up, as Lorelai said. Things won't always, you trusted yourself and you screwed it up. Well, what are you going to do about it? You're going to empower yourself to pick yourself back up, reflect and ponder about what went wrong, what could you have done differently, maybe nothing. Sometimes things just fall apart for no obvious reason. And give yourself grace about that as well. Respecting your own worth. It goes back to that, doesn't it? Exercise daily. Oh my land, Linda, what did you throw that in there for? Because study after study after study shows that when we do that, we feel stronger. It is not about losing weight. It is just about doing what's best for your health. And that's not just emotional and mental like we're talking about in this webinar. It has to do with physical health too. And as I said, it's not about losing weight. I exercise, I don't lose weight. But I will tell you, I do feel better after I exercise. The endorphins that are released, the fact that I did it for myself to make sure I stay healthy, that's empowerment, isn't it? I did it for myself to make sure I stay healthy. I'm empowering myself when I exercise daily. Just moving more, 2 to 3 minutes even. Absolutely, Stephanie. Walking. I asked my doctor the other day on my annual checkup. She was saying, oh, you can get a smartwatch and you can have all these apps and you can do different kinds of things every day. And she's half my age or close to it. And so I looked at her and I grinned and I said, is a treadmill basically good exercise? And her eyes got big and she goes, oh my gosh, yes. And I said, well, that's my basic exercise because I can read while I'm doing things on the treadmill. So I empower myself to keep that pretty much my basic exercises along with strengthening exercise. So understand that. Good, Yasmin, thank you. Well, like I said, I don't lose weight and it seems to get harder every year to lose it. So I just decided I'm going to try to stay healthy. Understand and forgive just what Stephanie was saying earlier, my own mistakes. I make them weekly, sometimes daily, and certainly some big ones from year to year. Yeah, Melody, I've got my Fitbit too. I watch my steps. I don't keep track of a lot of other stuff, but I do watch my steps and my pulse and things like that. Okay, so understand and forgive your own mistakes. I'm not going to ask you what they are. I bet some came to mind for you. They did for me. Some of them were pretty significant. But I have to understand what went wrong or where my vision got cloudy when I made that choice, and then forgive it. Because I cannot change what happened in the past. I can change how I react to it. I can change how I behave moving forward. But whatever is done is in stone. So why am I going to wallow in that? Why am I going to hold that against myself? That's not going to be empowering at all. If, like somebody said earlier, if I beat myself up over that. And then I need to be willing to learn from it. I can't just stuff it down somewhere, right? Because I'm not going to learn from that. So I need to be willing to learn from my mistakes. Do I always? I think I probably do initially, but sometimes my memory fades on learning from my mistakes, and sometimes I have to relearn it. And that's okay too. The whole thing is about that thing that I mentioned earlier, trusting yourself and being honest with yourself. I mentioned this word earlier, develop and protect your boundaries. I've had so many people say to me when they were working from home, and some of you might still be doing that, that people sort of intruded on their time working from home because, gosh, you're at home. I can just knock on the door. I can ask you to babysit, or I can ask you to walk my dog, or whatever it might be. You need to develop and protect your boundaries because that's empowering. I joke that my neighbors all know that if my front door is closed and my drapes are closed, do not knock on my door unless it's an emergency or you really need to talk to me, because that's my quiet time. That's a boundary I have. I don't answer my phone during that time. It's a boundary. So just understand, and if you put a check mark beside this one, understand that you'll have to protect them after you develop them, because people won't pay attention to them if you don't. And it's not empowering to be a doormat, is it? And when we don't have any boundaries and people will run all over us, that's not empowering. So be careful about that. Acknowledge and find a way to use your natural talents. Maybe that's not always what you get from your job. Maybe you have a job where you enjoy it, you're doing well at it, but you have some natural talents that aren't being used. Find a way to do that. And Joan, I don't know if you're talking about your natural talents or your boundaries, but either one of those might apply, right? Acknowledge and find a way to use, yeah, boundaries are huge. That's another one. Remember, I talked about self-talk being one for everybody. Boundaries is probably one for most of us. And I do get drawn into that occasionally as well. I've had to set boundaries with family members before and, clients before. So be aware of your boundaries and then make sure you get to use your natural talents. It's very empowering to feel good about what's flowing out of you. And I know for most of you that has to do with your work as well, like it does with me. But there are other areas of my life besides my work that I have a bit of a natural talent for, and I need to find a way to use that. I've mentioned this word probably 3 times already. Make time for serious self-reflection. That's empowering. And it doesn't have to be the first of the year. As a matter of fact, when it's the first of the year, it seems like everything kind of falls apart and we really don't take it seriously. So I would suggest maybe sometime this week, it's only Tuesday, that you take, maybe it's just a few minutes, but you give some serious thought to what we talked about today. What needs to change? What can you do a little more effectively? What do you need to stop doing? What do you need to start doing? Assume good intentions from others, positive intent when you're interacting with them. It may or may not be true, but if you start out assuming it, at least you're on a positive path. If you start out assuming negative intent, and it may be somebody you don't get along with, your personalities clash, or you've had issues in the past. So our instinct is to assume negative intent, but that doesn't feel very empowering when we enter that interaction, does it? So assume positive intent from others. If it's not positive intent, that's on them. That's their issue. This is a big one. Be difficult to offend. And again, I'm going to step on toes here, but I feel like we're being told that we should be offended by everything. And I really try to back away from that. Now, I will also tell you, I grew up having my feelings hurt, being very sensitive, withdrawing and pouting and all those kinds of things. And I've really worked on that because that's not empowering for me. Even if people intended to offend me, it's still not empowering for me to absorb it like a sponge. I need to reflect it like Teflon. Be difficult to offend. For any of you that somebody says something, let me give you an example. This is another human trait we have. We walk into a room and we see a group of people and they're talking and they look up and see us and they stop talking. What's the first thing we assume? Exactly, Margie. That's huge, isn't it? Don't be a victim. It's very empowering not to be a victim. What's the first thing we assume when we walk into a room and people stop talking? Yep, they're talking about me and it was negative, right? We're not thinking they're planning a big party for us. We assume they were gossiping about us, saying something snarky, whatever it might be. Again, that goes back to the self-worth thing, but we need to assume positive intent, and we need to be difficult to offend. And so what if they were talking about me? That's their issue. Be difficult to offend in life, period. Not just when you walk into a room, but in life, period. Now, I don't want you to be so arrogant or obnoxious that you never listen to people, that you never accept feedback. That's important, but be difficult to offend. Take personal responsibility. If you made a commitment, if you made a promise, if you've told somebody something, if you're given a job to do, take personal responsibility. And this goes along with that. Be accountable to somebody, including yourself. It's another area that I know I get on a soapbox about a few of these things, but personal responsibility and accountability are going by the wayside because it's always somebody else's fault. We're always the victim, right, Margie? You and I aren't, and nobody in this room is. I know you wouldn't do that, but that's what our world is becoming. And we're forgetting to take personal responsibility. We're forgetting to be accountable for our own lives. Isn't being accountable for your own life very empowering? So be accountable to someone, including yourself. You need to direct your thoughts. When I said watch your self-talk, negative thoughts will come. What are you going to do with them? You need to redirect them, don't you? Oh man, the vase fell off the refrigerator. Okay, I'm going to direct my thoughts to the fact that there wasn't a cat under that could have gotten severely hurt. That the cat left the room when I asked her to, so she wasn't stepping in it. Direct your thoughts that my work will continue because I love what I do and people know that, and I will continue to get hired for my work, even though I'm self-employed, and it's very scary when libraries go through budget issues and things like that. I need to direct my thoughts. Yeah, Margie, one last thing to pack. I like that attitude. Maybe I should go around breaking a few things, right? Yes, Joan, think positive. I know what you mean. You don't have to respell it because I always know what you mean because I type things wrong all the time. So don't worry about it. Challenge long-held beliefs. Several of you mentioned, self-worth and how you talk to yourself and things like that. I have long-held beliefs about my self-worth, and I have challenged them for several years, and I'm moving forward on my yardstick. I'm not where I want to be with those long-held beliefs. Sometimes it might be about our appearance. It might be about our education level. It might be about the position we hold at work. It might be about family. Whatever it might be about, challenge those long-held beliefs that are keeping you from empowering yourself. You're the only one that can do that. Other people could try to help you, but until you believe it yourself, until you challenge it yourself and say, no, that's not true and I'm not going there. Some of you know, I use this as an example. My dad used to say he didn't want 3 kids. Guess what? I was the 3rd one. That doesn't feel good. But I'm okay. He raised me to have good morals and good ethics and respect for people and all of that. So I'm thankful for that. So that long-held belief, which is still at the back of my mind, might I add, that I wasn't wanted, you just do it. You just challenge it. There are no rules for the last one. There you go. I had lots of rules. Find ways to build my assertiveness. This is part of empowerment. You need to speak up for yourself, not in a mean, cruel, obnoxious, in-your-face, snarky kind of way, which I've been around people that call that assertiveness. It's not. It's rude. But you can find ways to build your assertiveness. And empowering yourself is part of that. It's interwoven, isn't it? Determine your own values. What's most important to you? Write that down on your handouts right now. Put it in the chat box if you feel comfortable doing that. What are your values? I just want to give you a second to think about that and write it down. so that you're living by your values, respecting people and having them respect us too, right, Tamara? It is like your legacy. People see it, don't they? They may never comment on it, but it's your legacy. Honesty. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Or surely there's another rule, that's the golden rule, but I've heard another one, treat others the way they want to be treated. And part of that has to do with how we're built, how we're wired. If I treat you in the way I am wired, I'm going to come across sometimes as abrupt, as non-empathetic, just because I'm one of those get her done kind of people. But that may not be what you need from me. So maybe tune in to people so that you're treating them the way they want to be treated, right, Shirley? And I'm not picking on that rule because I think it's a wonderful rule. None of us wants to be treated rudely or snarkily or anything like that. So certainly that's a great place to go. Treat others the way you want to be treated. You want to be treated kindly and with respect and openly and honestly. And Ernestine said respect. Stephanie said just be kind. And Yasmin said being kind. All of the above. But know what it is, because the world can suck you into something that's polar opposite to that. Susan said faith, family, freedom, honesty, respect, kindness. If we got up every day, Susan, and lived that way, we'd empower ourselves, wouldn't we? Again, we mess up sometimes. Give yourself grace. Be kind to yourself. Several of you mentioned kind. Denise said compassion. Have compassion for yourself because you don't always get it right. Even when you know in the moment you're getting it wrong. Maybe I'm the only one that's ever happened to, that my mouth opens and something comes out and my little pea brain is saying, Linda, don't say it, and I say it anyway. So have that empathy and compassion and kindness for yourself as well. That will go a long way. Be mindful. Love yourself, absolutely, Susan C. Be mindful in the moment. What are you thankful for right now? Just name one thing. It could be coffee. Type it into the chat box. What are you thankful for right now? Job, absolutely. I love my work, Cindy, so I'm very thankful for that. My pen, yeah, isn't that cool when you get a really good pen? I love that. Job, kids, fur children, yes, life, waking up, good health, family, my book, my family and friend. I wrote in my gratitude journal, y'all know I keep one of those. I'm on number 3,889 today. But when I came in from the garage after dropping that big paver, those things are heavy. I went into the sunroom, grabbed my gratitude journal, and wrote down no broken bones when the paver fell. I'm mindful of those things. My husband, yes, I'm mindful of the wonderful years I had with my husband because not everybody has that. My new 16-week-old fur baby, Anna Rose. What kind of a fur baby, Melody? You can't just tell us it's a fur baby. Susie said, mindful for everything. Joan said, family, work, and friends. Yeah, and sometimes we just need to be in the moment, don't we, Joan? We need to tell our family we're thankful for them. Aw, Siamese. How cute. 16 weeks old. Wonderful. You know, I sometimes will text a friend of mine and just tell her I appreciate her. And I always say, love you, lady, or something like that. I do the same thing with my niece. We just don't know how long we have. Be mindful. I love living in Florida. Some of you who have never lived elsewhere think, oh, it's boring to have all this sunshine and all this heat. If you've ever lived in a cold winter where there are blizzards and nasty roads and all that stuff, you might feel differently. I'm mindful of that. So we have things in black, exactly. I mean, it was a beautiful place to live in the fall, but I'm mindful of nature. I'm mindful of the birds that visit my bird feeder in the morning during my quiet time. That's empowering because you know what? It starts my day on a positive note. And I have that choice. I have a friend who referred me to a book called Tiny Habits. And I'm going to be honest with you, I haven't read the rest of the book. The first habit was every morning when your feet hit the floor, you say to yourself, it's going to be a great day. That's a pretty good habit to have. Part of the book got into a lot of exercises and things that I couldn't really get my head around, and I haven't finished it, but that's a pretty good habit to have. That's being mindful, isn't it? Born and raised here, love the seasons. Yeah, I know, Joan. That's why when I move, I'm going to have a red maple planted so I see a change of leaves. I do love October. I will tell you the last two times I visited Ohio for clients, which is where I'm from, it was in October and all the leaves were brown. There's a song in there somewhere, California Dreamin'. Absolutely, Melanie, we're blessed just to live in America, even though it doesn't feel like it sometimes. So just be mindful, whatever it is for you. A Hoosier, yeah. So you know that. You know those gray, cloudy, cold days, right? Don't dwell. Don't dwell on the negative. Don't dwell on what's missing from your life. If you are going to dwell, dwell on the good stuff. Dwell on how fortunate you are for whatever reason. Might be family, friends, job, talents. It might be any of those things. Buckeyes. Yes, Joan, me too. But don't dwell where it's not going to serve you well. Be intentional about your personal growth. How are you growing? You're here today, and I hope this helps you grow. But I know this is not the only growth available to you. So be intentional about your personal growth. I have friends who retired in their 40s and 50s, and I try not to judge, but I can't wrap my head around sitting inside with the blinds closed every day and watching sports, no matter how much you love sports, every day for years, because I want to keep growing. Now that sounded very judgmental, and I apologize for that, but that's just me. Remember, live your life your own way. And that's what I need is personal growth. So that's what I'm saying. Check the ones that apply to you. Joan, I hope it has been cleansing. I really do, because we need this, don't we? I do. I love doing these kinds of programs because it's like, Linda, pay attention, you need this too. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate those comments. Listen, several of you mentioned that earlier. It's huge. Sometimes when we really get tuned into listening, if you will, listening to ourselves, but listening to other people as well, they kind of look at us like, who are you? What did you do with my friend? Because I don't remember you listening this well before. It's amazing. And this skill, this art is going by the wayside. The more we have social media and texting and instant messaging and online chats and things like that, the harder it is for us to get our attention focused on somebody and really listen deeply without judgment. Just listen. Just be there for people. Sometimes that's all they need. Thank you, Melody. I appreciate that. I try, and sometimes, like I said, it's as good for me as it is for somebody else in the room. Break the procrastination habit. You cannot feel empowered when you have things hanging over your head that you know you should be doing or at least starting, and you're choosing not to. So break that habit. Again, use your yardstick, A to Z. I'm at a K on procrastination. I tend to do it. I need to overcome it. Move yourself to an O or a P. You may never get perfect on it, but you're going to get better at it. Thank you, Joan. Oh, you guys. Thank you. Oh my gosh, I have to copy this chat before I leave today because you are therapy for me today. Thank you. Break your procrastination habit. Break the negativity habit. And it does get to be a habit, doesn't it? When all we see in the world, like it did with my friend, all he saw in the world, no matter what was going on, it could be about, something good happening and he would say, but, yeah, but. So be careful about the yeah, but. Watch what I'm feeding myself, and I'm not talking about food, although we all know that's important, but what are your inputs? What kind of TV are you watching? What kind of movies are you watching? What kind of music are you listening to? How much news are you absorbing? What are you looking at on social media? Choices. The two before: listen, don't dwell, and be intentional about my personal growth. I hope that's what you needed, Susan. Yeah, exactly, Susie. They are. A lot of it is bad influences. And when we feed ourselves that's what our brain starts looking for. So be careful about that. Recognize that empowering myself is a journey. That's what we've been talking about so far. Find ways to develop your confidence. It's hard to feel empowered if you feel less than confident. Remember, all of these things are interwoven. As we work on one, the other one improves some by osmosis. And when we work on the other one, the first one improves. So recognize it's a journey and it will never be over until you are. Find ways to develop your confidence. Stimulate your mind. I'm not talking about caffeine, but do something that stimulates your mind, something different, an art museum. I can't say a library because you're already there, but things that stimulate your mind. Use adversity as a tool to do that self-reflection and pondering and all those things we talked about. Use it as a tool. It'll teach you. Watching birds, yes, love that. Admit that I can't change what I'm unwilling to admit. See that word twice? Admit it. You can't change it if you're not willing to admit that it's happening to begin with. Admit that I can't change what I'm unwilling to admit. Choose not to live in regret. We all have them. I could make you a notebook of the things that I've regretted in my life. I'm not going to live there. It's what made me who I am, good, bad, or indifferent. So don't live there. Don't allow empowering yourself to make you selfish, because that's not what we're talking about today, is it? That's not going to be helpful to you or anyone else, because as you step back a year from now and you see how selfish you've been, that doesn't feel very empowering. Take an honest look at habits, whatever those might be. The habit of, for me, when I get a little bored in my work because things have slowed down or I'm caught up or whatever it might be, I reach for a snack. It's a bad habit. So yesterday I bought grapes, and now I have a bowl of grapes on my kitchen counter. And when I walk by and I just think, oh, I need something to eat, I eat a grape. Take an honest look at your habit. Dancing, I love that habit. Get control of your finances. Ouch, Linda. This is about empowerment. Well, don't you think being in control of your finances has something to do with empowerment? And here's the thing, it's kind of a weird dichotomy, if you will, where sometimes when we're out of control with our finances, we spend more to make us feel empowered. And then we look and we go, uh-oh, probably shouldn't have done that. Yep, started to get out of the department and walk for a few minutes instead of snacking. Exactly, Susan. Yes, Joan, it is amazing, isn't it? It is amazing. It makes you feel empowered. You have so much more freedom when you have control of your finances. Great foundation, absolutely. Understand the consequences of not making changes. If you leave here today and you think, boy, that made me feel good, rah, 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 but you don't do anything different, nothing's going to change, is it? And there could be consequences to that. Make a promise to yourself. Remember personal responsibility, accountability. Linda Bruno can't follow you around to make sure you're doing these things. I'd be happy to if I could figure out a way to do that, because I'm a good nudger. Make a promise to yourself. You're the most important person in today's discussion. So make a promise to yourself. Be flexible in life. It's never going to be perfect. We don't even know what we think perfect would be. We have a picture of it, and then if we got there, I promise you it would not be perfect. So just be flexible. Again, what can you learn from it? How can you grow? How can it make you stronger? Be willing to keep at it. Whatever it is, your job, a challenge, a goal, overcoming a habit, creating a new habit. Be willing to keep at it. We're so used to instant gratification that we think we should just be able to flip a switch. But in so many important things in life, that's not possible. So you don't have to answer this, but how many check marks did you have? Which ones would you like to work on? I want you to reflect on that, because if you leave and you don't have any check marks, then I've failed you and you're not going to be more empowered. Good, Susan. I'm glad to hear that. Lots of check marks. Now here's the other challenge. Pick just one to really focus on first, and then move on and pick another one. Because if we look at all of them, and many of these apply to me, but I can't focus on all of them at once because that doesn't feel empowering. It feels like I'm a failure. 7 and 9, I like that. So just pick one or two to really start thinking about and start working through. 11, I love it. But you know, Yasmin, if you pick all 11 and you think, oh, tomorrow I'm going to do all 11, you won't, and then you'll give up on all of them. And that is not going to empower you. So I want you to circle at least 2 that you have a check mark beside that you'll start working on immediately. Aren't the birdies cute? Then ask yourself, how are you going to do it? How are you going to move forward to empower yourself more? I said just many. Yes, exactly. Thank you all for being here today. If it's to be, it's up to me. And that's what I want all of you to repeat, those exact words. Remember, if it's to be, it's up to me. Thank you, everybody. I have so enjoyed today, and I appreciate you being so transparent and honest with me as
Thanks, Linda, for that informative webinar. As always, we encourage you to keep an eye on the Swiftland CE calendar, Swiftland Facebook page, or your message from our listservs. And for the next one with Linda Bruno, that's going to be next week, July 28th, and that is Tapping into Employee Talents with Linda. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and have a terrific rest of the day.